All right, let's start this guy, boys. Golden Kraken is up, and I'm just gonna let a video play because so that I can talk while talking about the mechanics. Okay, the number one thing for this fight, first and foremost, is you need a wind DPS. I think that's like pretty much generic for every single solar raid. You want the one, at least one unit that is elemental advantage, and that's because you wanna do the QTE that where the boss puts up in elemental shield, and you need like an elemental advantage for it. It's basically destroy the parts. This boss has a lot of respawning parts, and so you want to destroy the parts. The parts will give extra points, so you want to destroy these parts as soon as possible. They're really low, relatively low HP, so that's okay. Now here's the thing, there's the back tentacles and the front tentacles. So the front tentacles is if you actually kind of delayed it, what's gonna happen is this is what's gonna happen on the front tentacles. So he's gonna spawn the front tentacles, he's gonna charge up here, you see the yellow aura that's on him, and then after a while he's gonna do an AoE that will pierce your cover. So you definitely want to destroy the front tentacles. The back tentacle, it doesn't really do much on phase 1, but on phase 2 it will start, like if you kind of leave it around, it will do these laser thing, and if you're kind of slow on that, even though you destroyed it, there's like this glitch that it still does like shot afterwards. So yeah, anyways, I don't know if that's like an overly crazy glitch or anything, but yeah, you do want to destroy the back tentacles as soon as possible in phase 2, just so that it will try to avoid that getting hit by those lasers. You're gonna do that, and then you have to dodge these also. And those yellow lasers, you can actually dodge them by just like covering. And as you can see here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna swap to the character to just dodge it. And what that allows me to do is, as you can see actually in this team in particular, is I'm using litter with Summer Rosanna and Summer Sakura and Ludmilla and Modernia. I don't have a healer here. This is using litter, which has cover recovery, so it's either you need a healer or have a cover recovery. Now another mechanic that this boss is doing is these missiles, and it's pretty simple, right? Just like shoot it down. They do hurt a lot, so you destroy them as soon as you can see them. It's just to make it easier. Now okay, so this is the part where the boss does AoE. He did it a little bit earlier also, which I did cover. You can just cover this out. You will notice that this is where litter's cover recovery come in clutch, because now I'm waiting for litter to just recover my cover. Now this is around the halfway point of the fight. This is where transitioning to phase 2, and you just pretty much do this QTE. It's very simple, right? If you're using rocket launcher, try to avoid using rocket launcher so that you avoid that. Now here is something that I want to talk about in particular for the teams that do use this team in particular that doesn't have a healer, and I'm using litter for recovery, is you want to avoid trying to keep like shooting the front tentacles as soon as possible, because there's another strat here that can kind of like give you time to recover your cover, and that is like delaying them. And I'll talk about it in a bit, because you will see in here this boss will eventually do this wide AoE, and look, I will just run out of cover, and so the next time the boss does this AoE again, I'm pretty much like screwed. So for this team in particular, I'm gonna move a little bit here just to show you a little bit of what I would do instead. Is I would just try to delay it, so when the boss like starts spawning that tentacle, I can start to delay it a little bit. You can start delaying it a little bit, but by delaying that a little bit, that will give your litter a chance to recover your cover. So that's just one strategy, but pretty much phase 2 is kind of similar to phase 1. You do want to just like keep just shooting the parts and as soon as possible. I think this boss is relatively straightforward. If you actually use a healer, it's even a lot more straightforward. You just destroy the parts, just keep destroying the parts. And these parts destruction is relatively important because like by the end of the fight, you will end up like roughly getting around like 200 mil or higher. So if you are kind of slow on destroying these parts, that might be a little bit problematic, or you know, you would run out of not get as much DPS. Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Like destroy the front tentacles, and if you want to delay for your cover recovery or boss mechanics, because sometimes like you can delay the boss mechanics, then you can hold off on destroying the front tails. You can slow down on that one just to delay the mechanics, but otherwise like it's a relatively straightforward boss. Bring a healer or cover recovery and then like shoot the parts. That's basically this boss in a nutshell. But yeah, now let's talk about team compositions. Remember when I said like, oh, you can start using crown with Naga? It's starting to get to that point now where you can actually forgo Tia and use crown with Naga because we're getting so much more units out there. And so the biggest damage right now, at the very least for day one, is with Scarlet, Black Shadow, and Alice, and using either D. You can use other units, obviously, that has cooldown reduction. Yeah, you have Crown with Naga, and that's just big damage right there. And earlier on the demonstration, I did talk to you guys about this team in particular. Some are Rosanna, some are Sakura, and then Litter, and Ludmilla and Modernia. Now I would probably like switch out, like I think for me in particular, I am using a scuff PC, so Modernia wasn't really contributing as much, and actually it was doable for me to just use Maxwell, so I was using Maxwell instead. And not to mention also Maxwell does help with the fast charging. I would replace either Ludmilla or Modernia with Maxwell if you guys can, but one thing to make sure of is like if you put in Maxwell, make sure that Summer Sakura is getting the damage buff. And to give you an idea, it's because her damage is absolutely insane in this boss. This one example, I actually used Helm here just because like this was my first run, so I didn't know that I could actually min-max it without a healer. But this is one example, and also I'm using a scuffed PC, so Modernia is actually relatively bad. Actually, for me in particular, if I have to use the same team, I probably would replace Modernia with Maxwell here. And the next one is the bunnies. The bunnies is pretty standard as usual, but this is where a lot of people just delegated their volume eventually, because Litter is being used in a team that some people that have been min-maxing are doing the no healer with Litter, and instead taking advantage of her cover recovery. God, this granny is too much. Like she's doing everything. You got cover recovery, she got insane buff, she got max ammo. Like god damn it. And anyways, moving on. All right, so next thing is the shotgun team. Actually, I didn't add it here, but you can also put in the shotgun team into the bunnies as well as in an option. Anyways, but the shotgun team is here, and it is actually relatively performing pretty darn good. You could use either Guilty or Pepper as your main shotgun wind, and so Guilty is good substitute with Leona, or Pepper if you need like a healer. Instead of this, then you can start using like healer. If you use Guilty, you can use like, you know, Bunny, Alice, and actually I didn't put in here, but you can definitely use Rapunzel or Summer Mary, are these other options as well as your healer. So I would those are kind of like my options as for the shotgun. And using Guilty as your win. There's the other team that is like electric with Summer Anise with Scarlet, and then the healer you could use like Biscuit on that alongside with Dala, and you're using Helm as like another form of healer. And then there's other teams also that you could kind of like flip around. There's also like the solo carry kind of team. So just to give an example, where you're using Miranda, and if you don't have like Summer Sakura, you could use Snow White, or like just as an alternative. But Snow White is relatively more on the lower DPS side here. I'm sure there's gonna be min-max that other Snow White endures will do because of how crazy insane damage she's doing, Summer Sakura is doing. Then I think it's actually not bad to do this. I think for me, it kind of relatively performed close to getting close to this Sakura sustain without the healer on the with the litter. It's a pretty decent alternate. I think the main thing is, as long as you're upkeeping also destroying the parts. Destroying the parts does give about like roughly like almost 200 mil or so throughout the fight if you destroy a lot of the parts. So that's something to consider and make sure that you're keeping on top of. And I just wanted to add this other team, basically just the crown alternative, because for example, if you guys ended up using Tia Naga still, because I understand like not everyone's gonna have like completely all the Tia Naga things, then the alternative is to just kind of have like either crown and the healer, and then the Dorothy infinite ammo. But another thing is, like, if you're, for example, just somehow using the Scarlet, Shadow, and Alice on the Tia Naga, then you can also just like pretty much like replace them with any other DPS. One thing to keep in mind is, again, just make sure that you do have like wind DPS. And one good thing about also using crown is crown can actually just be used to tank the AoE, so you can absolutely run with crown and just not bring a healer. But yeah, those are the main teams right now. It's getting a little bit late, so I wanted to just get the guide out for now. As usual, I will try to add more if I do find more in these on the guide, any teams that I'll do. And that's about it. Anyways, good luck with all you gamers, and I'll update this, and I'll see you guys next time.